Hello, everybody. It's me again. And we're here for another episode of How to Get Hired. I'm Bill, the company's expert, and this is where I do a Q&A on careers, job interviews, resumes, anything to do with your career or finding a job. So networking, all that kind of stuff altogether. Now, I'm still on my sort of early morning schedule, so I had a couple of questions here that people had sent in. And the first question was, how to get a job with no experience. I've done a video on this recently, but how to get a job with no experience. You know, this is something that I put out a public opinion poll, and some people say that it can't be done. It can totally be done. It just can't be done in every possible situation. There are some jobs where you just need experience, and that's just it. That's what they look for, and that's what they need. But a lot of jobs, you'd be surprised how you can get around that requirement if you know what you're doing. The first thing that you can offer, let me put it this way. The first thing you need to know is that you have experience. You just don't have work experience. All the things that you're going to be required to do on a job is very similar to the tasks that you had to do in your education. You had to be punctual. You had to have a good work ethic. You had to submit things on time. You had to work with groups. You had to collaborate. You had to go and find information. You had to learn new things. You had to apply yourself. You know, all that stuff you had to do previously. So that's what you're going to be doing in your job. And the first thing is to recognize that you have all the experience you need for most jobs for you to do it. Okay, you may not know the expectations and the culture of how they do things at that particular organization, but that will come. Okay, you can do the job. Secondly, why do people hire the candidates that they hire? Usually, it's not down to raw qualifications. In some exceptional cases it is, but in like literally 98% of all situations, the candidates are chosen not because of their raw qualifications, but because of who they are as a person, their soft skills, right? How often does someone get hired who is qualified to do the job, but nobody can work with them? Nobody can communicate with them. They have a negative attitude. They don't seem to be excited about the job. They don't have any passion for what they do. They don't know anything about the company, and they don't get along with the interviewer. How often does that happen? I'd say practically never. So, you know, that's the reason why people get hired, because at job interviews, usually the way it goes is that the people that have been invited to the job interview are qualified candidates. They're all qualified. On paper, they can all do the job. They all have the minimum requirements. They all have what they need to be able to do the job. You now have to choose between them, and the way you choose between them is by considering who they are as a person. That's why they bring you in for an interview and see what you're like. They ask you questions. They ask you all these weird, cryptic questions about, you know, the things that they do, like, you know, what amount of money do you need, even though technically they shouldn't ask that because it's already been decided, kind of, right? There's a range. You know, they ask you about your previous jobs. Why should that matter? They ask you about your attitudes towards where you're going to be in the future, or what do you think is your greatest strength or your greatest weakness? You know, tell me about yourself. Introduce yourself. I mean, you know, why would they ask that when they already have your resume? When you think about it, those questions are not really adding the value that they have at face value. They're asking those questions to try and get to know who you are, right? Are you easy to talk to? Are you easy to communicate? Are you likable? Do you have charisma? Or do you have a negative attitude? Are you upset? Are you impatient? Do you have a bad temper? Do you misinterpret what people say to you? You know, this kind of thing. This is what they're really trying to find out about you. And that's what purpose those questions serve, right? So that's the basis on which they select people. They select between candidates who are all qualified to do the job. So, having said that, how do you get a job with no experience? Well, think about it. If you have the education, okay, and in the course of your education, you have done all the things you need to do to be able to do this job, and then on top of that, you have all the soft skills you need. You're likable, you got the right attitude, you're passionate about this work, You want to work for the company. You're easy to get along with. You can collaborate with other people. You can communicate. You don't say inappropriate things or don't understand what an appropriate behavior is and what isn't. If you have all that stuff, you'd be a good candidate for the job. So it's a matter of communicating that and showing that to the decision maker at the organization. I put out a public opinion poll recently about like, how do you get a job with no experience? And most people got what I believe is the correct answer. You contact the hiring manager proactively, not the recruiter, not after they posted the job, but you look for organizations or companies that have not yet posted a job, but are probably looking for someone like you, and you contact the hiring manager proactively. Who's the hiring manager? They're a manager. They're a decision maker. They have the authority to hire someone. You reach out to them and you basically say, hello, I'm here. I can do this. I can solve this problem. If you're ever looking for someone like that, please let me know. I'd love to work for you. And there you go. You know, that's an extremely powerful way of getting hired, especially when you don't have a lot of experience. And you would not believe the success stories that some people have had with doing just that. So there you go. If you have any questions about job interviews or about anything, let me know. Get in the chat. You should be able to see a chat box somewhere near my face and ask your question. I'll see if I can help you out. Another question I got was someone was saying, how do you answer the question, how do you think you will fit into this operation? Okay, so that's the question. How do you think you will fit into this operation? This is yet another form of the standard job interview question. What are your strengths? So hopefully you know the answer to what are your strengths, because this is just a thinly veiled form of that question. When you go to a job interview, they are guaranteed to ask you this question in some way, shape, or form, right? The first issue, the first thing that this question is checking for is the thing that you consider to be your strength. Is that what we consider to be your strength, right? Sometimes people have a different perspective. You know, sometimes they consider the strangest thing that doesn't apply to this job as a strength. Sometimes the interviewer disagrees with you that that is a strength or that that's a strength worth mentioning, right? So first you got that issue, right? And then they want to see that you have an answer. If you can't answer what your strengths are, they're going to perceive that to be as a red flag. Now, the big question is, how do you know, okay? How do you know that you're going to say something that they regard as a big deal, that they think is very valuable? Well, the great thing here is that they've already told you in the job posting what they're looking for. They've given you a list of requirements. They've said, we want someone who has this, and this, right? So presumably they are looking for those and they consider the fact that you have those good, right? So if someone asks you in a job interview, what are your strengths? A great way to answer this very general question is to start going down essentially the requirements posted in the job posting and saying, well, I have 5 years experience in this. I think, you know, that's really given me an insight into how to do this type of work. I do have this particular degree or educational certification. You know, that's allowed me to have the knowledge to be able to work in this business. If they say, if they've said we're looking for people with skills, with these certain skills, you can say, well, I have these skills and I have those skills. These are things that they've all mentioned they're looking for. And you talk about them and why they're good. And those are your greatest strengths, right? So the things that you're saying are things that you know they want to hear. And presumably, when you start spouting off a bunch of things that they are already looking for, they want to verify that you have, you're giving them exactly what they want. So you come out as someone who has a lot of strengths that they consider strengths. And that's how you answer that question. Okay, awesome. We got some people in the chat. And this is kind of strange because it's not showing up in my feed, but I see it on my screen. That's strange. Okay, here we go. So I have to read this off a very small screen that's actually got a thin layer of dust on it. Here, this is from Pearl. Hello, Bill. I received an $18K offer from a company. However, I learned that the role could pay up to $27K. I already stated my current salary, 6K, in the mandatory field at the application stage. Negotiating may look awkward since they know my current salary and they would likely decline. Please, how can I go about this? I have 9 years experience in comparison to the role's 5 years. Okay, Pearl, so let me get this straight. So they offered you 18K. Presumably they've indicated to you that the range goes up to 27K. Presumably that's in the job posting. Okay, now you already stated your current salary, 6K, as a mandatory field in the application stage. Okay, so here's the deal. Salary negotiation is, you can't explain it in 2 minutes. There's a lot of principles at play here. Unfortunately, kind of the basic principles all start with the things that you've already done, right? So you've already told them what your current salary is. For you in the future and for other people, just so you know, that's none of their business, right? And they have no legal right to an answer. And there is no place they can go, at least in any country I've ever dealt with or I know about, certainly in the West. But even in India, as far as I know, like in other places, there's no place where they can go. There's no central database where a company can look up your salary history. You know what I'm saying? So whatever answer you provide them voluntarily, they can't verify, just so you know this, okay? It's like if somebody asked you, what's your credit card number? Like they can ask. But if you answer, one could argue that you're kind of being a fool, right? If you give them your credit card number just because they ask, right? You see, your current salary or your previous salary, that's all personal and confidential. Usually people treat it like that. Now, recruiters and things, they tend to be a bit underhanded. They tend to push for things that, you know, they legally have no right to, but they know that some people will just answer if they ask. So they push that as far as it'll go. Okay. Now, because you've already answered this, and if you've answered truthfully, that does put you at a bit of a disadvantage. Okay. It's like going to buy a car or something and the salesperson asking you, okay, what's the upper limit that you would ever possibly spend on this car? And you say, that would be, I don't know, you answer truthfully, I don't know, $40,000. And they say, okay, well, for you, I'm going to make you a special deal. This is $39,500, right? You see, like they use that to their advantage. And they know that you will pay that, you could pay that. And you know what I'm saying? Like the more information they have on you, the more they can win, right? Now, your negotiating power doesn't come from how well you can persuade someone when you're negotiating. Negotiating power comes from having alternative options. So if you're currently making 6K and, you know, let's pretend that job is secure and, you know, you're happy in the role, it's not going to go away anytime soon. You could easily sort of say no thank you to this new job and go back to your current job and be fine, right? That's your alternative to this job. So you've got two options, A and B. A is you stay where you are, B is you take this thing, right? Now, this job is not certain. If you have a job right now that's secure and, you know, it's a known quantity, you would have to be paid more money to take this because this is insecure. You could jump from your job that you're tolerating into something that could be just bad news. You take the job, it turns out they lied to you and you're actually doing different work for a different person. The person's a jerk. The conditions are terrible. And maybe they don't even pay you what they said they were going to pay you. You don't know. That could happen. So you're taking risk by leaving a decent job to go to this new one. So you have to be compensated for the risk. So you wouldn't take it obviously for 6K or maybe even 7K. You would have to have a non-trivial premium as you go to the new job, right? Now, maybe you know about this company. Maybe they've got a great reputation. So there's maybe less risk, or maybe you don't know anything about them, or you might have heard something bad about them. Then you're gonna need a big premium, right? Okay. But at the end of the day, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. You can ask for whatever amount of money you want, and you don't have to justify it. There's nothing preventing you from doing that, right? Now, the other reality is that they can always refuse, and there's nothing preventing them from doing that too, right? So you need to be able to ask for what you honestly feel it's worth, right? And if they ask you and they say, well, why are you asking for, like what did it pay, 18? Why are you asking for 25 when you're only making 6 right now? It's like, yeah, well, I got other offers. You could call their bluff with stuff like that. You can bluff. Actually, you're not calling their bluff. You're just bluffing. You can say stuff like that, right? See, they're going to use every trick in the book to try and get you for cheap. They're also going to use every trick in the book to convince you that a bad situation is actually a good situation, right? These are the tactics they're going to employ, or that they could employ, right? Most people do, right? So just be prepared for that. The problem is when they ask you for personal and confidential information and you just oblige, right? You're not doing yourself any favors. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage. The reason people do this is because they think that, oh, I'm an ethical person and I want to treat people honestly, and I'm hoping that they'll do the same. Unfortunately, in this kind of unscrupulous game, a little bit, unfortunately, a lot of recruiters don't honor that. They don't play by those rules. They take every advantage they can get. The fact that they asked you your current salary and made it a mandatory field, that signals to me that they are not doing this in good faith, that they are taking advantage of every possible thing they can do, right? So there you go. If you knew that the job pays anywhere between, say, 18 and 25, I would have put like 18 as my salary, regardless of what your salary is. Even if you're unemployed, I would still put 18 if it's a mandatory field, right? Now, from here, you don't have to feel like your hands are tied. Okay, you can go in there, you could ask for anything. You're going to need a significant premium, okay? And don't be afraid to ask for it. You don't have to justify yourself for them. If they say, well, why do you need that? You said this. It's like, I've got other offers and that's my business. I need this amount. And then you take it or leave it. If they say yes, great. If they say no, there's always that chance, right? And that's just the way it's done. That's the way you have to do it, because that's the reality of it. Okay. Now, what you would do in an ideal situation is go out and get other offers, right? When you have a selection of, you have 2 or 3 offers or 2 or 3 options, say you've got interviews lined up with other companies, right? So even if this one doesn't pan out, or they're only willing to hire you for a very little amount of money, so it doesn't pan out, you've got other options, right? That's the secret to winning at this game. Okay, and you don't have to take anything that you don't want to take that doesn't make sense for you. Okay, so I know that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully that's helpful for you. That's a great question, Pearl. Yeah, Pearl says the current salary was a mandatory fill. Yeah, I know that. I know that. You could put 6,000, you could put 27,000, you could put 18,000. You know what I'm saying? They're asking you something that they shouldn't be asking you ethically. You understand what I'm saying? They're doing it because even though they don't have the right to that information, they're trying to push what's ethical and what's legal. You understand? Don't play their game. Don't fall into that trap. That would be my advice, right? So you want my current salary, you're making it a mandatory field? Okay, hey, 2 can play that game. My current salary is 18. That's the low limit of this job? Okay, there we go. It's 18. Right? Or whatever, 17, like something like that, right? That's how I would do it. Now, you can't go back and wind back the clock. So you're going from this point on, you've already filled in 6. That's fine. You can go in there and ask, what I'd recommend is you go through the process. Don't give them any indication that you're going to demand a lot of money. Just go through the process as far as you can. And then if you get to the end and if they give you an offer, then you turn around and say, this is great. Thank you for the offer. I'm very excited. I look forward to working with you guys. I'm really over the moon about this. I've gone over the offer. Everything looks really good. Okay. I can do the vacation. I can do the work conditions. I can do the hours. I can do the holidays. I can do the sick time. It's all fine. Checks out. I just need you to pencil in this number instead of this one. And then we got a deal. I can start wherever you want, whenever you want. Okay. And if they balk at that and say, no, sorry, deal's off. It's like, okay, well, now you know. Right. But there's actual pressure for them to say yes, because if they made you the offer, they do not want you to turn it down. It's embarrassing for them if you do. So a lot of times, and I'm speaking as someone who's been on the other side of the table, they will, like, if it takes just a little bit more money and they got you, they'll be like, okay, we've put so much time into this process. You know what I mean? We've put so much time into this individual. We've selected them. That's the one we want. If it takes just like, just a little bit more, okay, fine, whatever, just get them. And then we can end this and get on with it. Right? So that's how this process works. I'm trying to give you the short version. There's a lot of principles here, but hopefully that makes sense. I wish you the best, Pearl. I think you're going to be fine either way. Jip H. Atkinson. Is that Atkinson? My comment feed is not working. I'm having to read this right off the YouTube screen. Jip Atkinson says, good morning, slightly off topic, but can you do a show about fake jobs? I don't really know too much about fake jobs. I don't really think there's much to say there. Yeah, some jobs, if you look in like at lowest tier kind of stuff, places like Indeed and stuff like that, where you get all kinds of shenanigans. It's not necessarily Indeed's fault. It's just the people that engage them. You get fake jobs. Now, there's a variety of reasons for that. The ones that I know of, because that's not my world. I've never engaged in that. I've never dealt with it, and I don't intend to. I try to deal with only things that are above board. But whenever you get those, in my experience, it's always been for purposes of some form of industrial espionage, right? I know that sounds very serious. It's like, for example, if you want to find out how much your competitor is paying their employees to do certain jobs, right? The easiest thing to do is to do what someone did to Pearl and post a job. There's no job there, but you just pay for a job posting. It goes out. You get people applying from different places. Some of them work at your competitor or something. So they're coming in to interview with you. And you do what these people did to Pearl, where they ask her, like, what's your current salary? And you already know that they are currently employed there at your competitor. So you just ask them, what are you making right now? And the whole purpose of this endeavor was to get that information. There's no job. You say, okay, thanks very much for your time, and we'll be in touch if this goes any further. And then you're just never in touch. I've never done that stuff. I think that's so stupid and underhanded. But when I've seen it, it's that type of thing that's going on, right? Like I was talking in a previous live stream about, how to do informational interviews, right? If you want to find out about some industry or some occupation, say you're in school and you don't know what you want to do with your life. Maybe you want to be a doctor. Maybe you want to be a lawyer. Maybe you want to be a data analyst, whatever. So how do you decide? How are you supposed to decide when you don't know anything about these businesses? You don't have any family members that are doctors or data analysts. So what would be really useful is being able to contact a few doctors and being able to sit down with the doctor and be able to ask them questions, have them give you a tour of, if they work in a hospital or a private practice or, a research lab, like show me what you do. I'm young, I'm a student. I'm trying to see if this is maybe something I'd like to do. Excuse me. So informational interviews are great tools. So I was asking people, like I was showing people, this is how you can do it. And you can sit down with people at all levels, people that you don't know, obviously. And it's a gold mine of information to find out about basically anything you want, right? So the question is, like fake jobs. why do people post fake jobs? It's almost like they're forcing a series of informational interviews. You want to talk to people that have this qualification and this experience and this whatever, it's not being honest with them. It's misleading and it's kind of underhanded. But when I've seen fake jobs, that's kind of been the general motivation, is to get information from these people, right? Maybe things that you're not allowed to find out. You don't have the right to that information. You can't go and get this information by looking it up, right? That's not a thing. But if you ask someone and they just give it to you, you know what I mean? So that's what they're doing, right? I mean, I don't even know if it's even legal. You would think that kind of activity would be illegal, right? If somebody was taken in by a fake job, you'd think they'd have grounds to sue someone. I mean, depending on what country you're in, you know what I mean? I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like it's kind of very underhanded. It's under false pretenses. So that's my knowledge of fake jobs. That's why people do it. So they can extract information from maybe a competitor's employees, or they're trying to do some weird form of market research. Like, we're thinking of posting a job, but we don't know how much we should pay. So we're going to talk to a bunch of people that work in that business as if we were hiring them and ask them what they're making, things like this. Right? Just steer away from stuff like that. If stuff looks fishy, just steer away from it, If stuff looks too good to be true, steer away from it. And look at networking, as always. That is the most popular way of getting jobs. Don't take my word for this. If this is a surprise to you or a shock, go look it up. Go research that. That's how most people get jobs. Some form of networking. And as you move further on in your career, that happens more and more as you climb to higher and higher levels. The way they recruit higher and higher positions, it's more and more by networking. Okay, Pearl says, negotiating may look awkward since they know my current salary, but they would likely decline. Please, how can I go about this? Well, what are you trying to do, Pearl? I mean, you're asking me about this and you're saying it's awkward. Well, what are you trying to do? It might be awkward, yes. Talking about money is awkward if it's not kind of something you're used to. But the key is to know your position and to ask for something, as far as you can tell, that they can do and that it's reasonable, right? So the most obvious thing would be to do the thing that everybody always talks about when we talk about compensation, is they say, go on to websites that give you the general salary range for different positions in different locations. Do your research and say, well, the average compensation for somebody in this city or this region, in this job, with my level of experience, is approximately this. The average is this. You can go look that up yourself. So I would like that. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for, right? You can ask for whatever you want. You don't have to justify anything, right? The reality is that they could turn you down. I mean, what's the point of getting a job? Jumping from a good job into a job, you don't know. It could turn out to be a fake job. It could turn out to be a terrible job. These people could all be liars. They could be lying to you through their teeth. You don't know. You're taking a risk. So if they're not going to pay you what you feel you need to justify it, then how is it a good thing for you to just bend to these people that want to pay you far less than what you might feel you're worth? Okay? So you need to figure out what you're doing there, Pearl, what your goals are. Yes, it could be awkward, but if you walk in there knowing what's reasonable and you know what your position is, what you will accept and what you won't, it's fine. And you don't have to negotiate anyone face to face. You don't. You leave that until they get an offer, right? You don't talk about money until the very end. So if they ask you questions like, what are your salary expectations? You say, well, in the beginning, it's too soon for me to say. I'd have to find out more about the job, right? I've done videos on this. If they ask it to you later, you say, well, I'm sure you guys provide a competitive salary. I'm not too worried about it. Something like that. That's a non-committal answer. And they say, well, we need a number. Well, I can't really give you a number. I mean, I can give you a range somewhere between this and this. It's a nice wide range. The limits are a stretch, but the limits are doable, right? So you say that, it's like, and they push you harder. I need a number. It's like, well, sorry, that's the best I can do for you. I'd be pulling a number out of the air, and I don't think that's the way you guys would want to handle this, you know? So it's kind of moot until we get to the point where, you know, there's an offer on the tables anyway, right? So you only have to worry about that when you get to the offer stage. And then at the offer stage, you can ask for whatever you want. And the worst they can do is just say no. Right? But if it doesn't make sense for you to do, don't take it because it's awkward. Okay? Matt says, hello, Bill. I feel I would be well prepared for interviews with your videos, but I can't get to that step. I've been looking to change jobs for more than a year. I feel like I'm just burning through contacts and wasting time and money on resume tailoring software. What else can I do? Yeah. I don't know much about resume tailoring software, unless you're talking about like Microsoft Word, you know. Look, all I can say is like, watch my videos because I talk a hell of a lot about networking. Here's something that you can do. Okay, I've got the screen already up, so I'm just going to show you. Okay, you see this right here? How successful people get jobs. I've done like a 10-minute video on this. This is one form of networking that can get you started. Okay, so check that out. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Do a search for it. The company's expert, How Successful People Get Jobs. And that may point you in a direction that might work for you. Okay. Other than that, like you need to know that just simply responding to internet job postings is not A, the only way to get a job, far from it, and B, it's actually not a great way of getting a job. Contrary to what the perception is, most people don't get hired that way. Right? So look at other ways of getting jobs. I've done videos on many other ways of getting jobs. So, I mean, and there's also other resources online or, you know, out in the world. So, you know, study up on that stuff. Learn about different methods of getting jobs. If you're doing the same thing over and over and it's going absolutely nowhere, try some of the other methods. You know, don't be afraid to step out of yourself a little bit and learn different techniques and different methods. Okay? I wish you all the best, Matt. Sorry, the writing is so small and it's green. I can't understand. On Davile. I got selected in a merit pool. I'm not sure what that is. Now my question would be, in a particular order, like, would there be a ranking? I don't know the context of what you're talking about, a merit pool, like a short list of candidates for a posted job. Is that what you're asking about? No, a lot of times this isn't I mean, with the possible exception of government and some areas like that, usually this isn't this highly controlled process that it might appear to be with a lot of companies, certainly in the private sector. In big organizations, you have a lot of people there that are very process focused. And so they might have their little process there, but rest assured, they're really not very effective if they do. You know, so it's basically up to the decision maker, or if they've sort of subbed it out to a recruiter to like micromanage all the resumes and all the develop like short lists of candidates to bring in for interviews. It's basically just their preferences, right? You know, so all their personal biases and, you know, how they regard different things on your resume as good or bad. It's all up to that. There's no formal ranking or order, really, unless it's some practice that one company is doing internally. Jip says, someone tried to steal my ID on Total Jobs. Oh, okay. That's not good. Pearl says, please, how does one answer this question? I was recently asked in an interview, what don't you like about your job? Okay, excellent question. I actually got a similar question Well, the question I got that I wanted to answer today was describe your best and worst boss. So describe your best boss and your worst boss. So that's similar to somebody asking you, like, what was it? What didn't you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? Okay. So listen, here's a principle of job interviews. Never say anything negative about yourself, about a company, about any other individual, a previous boss, a coworker, an interviewer, anyone. Don't say anything negative, okay? Because the moment you do, you lose. If they say, so thank you for coming in, Pearl, I've got your resume here. It looks really good. You look very qualified. So I got to ask you, describe your worst boss. And you say, oh, my worst boss, let me tell you, it was this particular individual. They were my last boss, or my last boss save one. And they were a jerk, and they were abusive, and they were angry all the time. And, they micromanaged me, and, they were an absolute, displeasure to work with. They were off-putting. They yelled constantly, and nothing was ever good enough for them. And I left my job because of that person. They were terrible. You've already lost, because what you've done is, you see, they don't know you, and you're making a first impression. This is their first time ever meeting you, and they're trying to get to know what you're like. Well, you've just signaled to them that you're the type of person that will badmouth someone behind their back, right? You're also someone that has a problem with their previous boss. Now, recruiters are taught, when they study HR, they go and get like an HR certificate or whatever. They are taught a basic principle, which is that past behavior predicts future behavior. This is what they're taught. You and I know that that's not always true. It's true sometimes, but not always, right? So based on this reasoning, if you had a problem with a previous boss and you could not work with them and it was a big problem for you, chances are, if they were to hire you, then you would have a problem with your new boss in this job, right? That's what it's telling them. That's what they're getting out of your response. So a good response, if they said, who was your worst boss? They're trying to bait you. They're trying to trap you. So the best way to wriggle out of that is to say, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess my last boss, it's not that they were bad. They weren't really bad. We were actually friends. But what I will say about them is that they were very demanding. They're probably the most demanding boss I've ever had. Now, it actually worked out okay because I rose to the challenge, and I had to do a lot of work, a lot more work than I've ever done before. Do you realize how I'm talking now about how good I am and not giving them reasons to not like me? I'm actually using this as a platform to talk about my strengths, right? Back into it. They got me to do a lot more work than I ever had. I worked harder than I ever did before. I didn't know I could work that hard. I didn't know I could, do my regular data entry job, but also have to manage a team of people. I had to manage all the new employees and train them and, conduct tours of the facility. I didn't know I could do that stuff. I've never been trained. It was never part of the job description, but I did it. And actually, you know what? I'm quite happy that I did. So it's actually kind of a good thing in a way that the boss was a little bit demanding, because I learned a hell of a lot, and I actually like doing that stuff now. You could go on and on. You could say, if ever that happens again, I'm ready. I'm ready to conduct tours. I'm ready to onboard employees, and I'm ready. I'm open-minded enough now to take on duties outside of my original job duties. For me, it's not a problem because I've done it before quite successfully, right? So you don't fall into their trap, right? They're wanting to get the dirt on you. They're giving you rope to hang yourself. They're saying, tell me about your worst boss, right? Hoping that you'll dish, right? And you wriggle out of it, right? This is how this stuff goes, right? They're paid to try and peel back the layers and get past all the canned answers and find out what you really think, what you're really like, right? Don't play the game. What's this? VD gaming virus? There's an ID. Hello, sir, from India. Hello, India, Mr. VD. Mr. VD. I'm going to just say Mr. Mr./Ms. Jip says, I've taken my phone number off my CV now. I applied for a bank job and they posted a link in an email which took me to the legitimate bank site where I produced my driving license and birth certificate. I hate that stuff. Like, this over-reliance upon, we need all of your qualifications. We're going to need your salary history. We're going to need photocopies of the deeds to your house. We're going to need the names and addresses of all your family members. We're going to need to know your, social insurance ID, social security number, and your passport number, photocopies of your passports and the passports of all your loved ones. Like, I hate that. That's so stupid. And usually that's for like jobs that are not very good anyway. You know what I mean? Entry-level crap where they treat you like a number rather than a person. Go the networking method and you don't have to do any of that. I cannot stress that enough. I know I sound like a broken record, always saying this, but it's so true. I got a bank card I didn't order. Oh my God. Fraud/ID investigation now underway. The bank said they will try to steal the post from the letterbox. My God. That's terrible. It looks so real. I'm sorry about that, Jip. That sounds like a terrible experience. Life is hard enough as it is without encountering these jackasses. Listen, everybody learns lessons, sometimes the hard way. God knows I certainly have. But just make it the last time you ever fall for this, Jip. You do that and it's worth it, okay? If from like now on, you're never going to be fooled again by anything like in any way related to this kind of thing, it's worth it. At least that's a good thing to come out of it. Okay, so just make sure it's the last time. And I got good news for you. You don't have to go through stuff like this to get a decent job. You just don't, okay? And if you're wondering, if you're listening to this or watching this going like, what the hell is he talking about? What do I have to do? I told you, in a nutshell, I put it all into one video. Where was it? I gotta get my browser up here. This video right here. Okay. So I put it right in there. I take you through an example, right? How successful people get jobs. So if you're curious and you want to actually get an answer to that, check out that video. That's all right there. Where are we here? Ant Johnson, getting it done early. I love it. Yeah. I assume you're talking about the time of my live streaming. Yeah. My dream. Oh gosh, I missed it. I'm late. It's okay, my dream. You're here and you have the replays that you can replay. And you can fast forward the bits where I'm rambling and putting my foot in my mouth and just being generally cringe. You can just fast forward all that, right? It's perfect. And you can play it on double speed or 1.75 times the speed, which I think is a bit snappier. On the volley says, yes, it's like setting you up for a fall, setting you up to fail. Yes. Huda says, hello, sir. I worked out of school last year as an assistant at first, but the boss promised me that I would get promoted and be as a main teacher in 6 months, but it didn't happen. I'm a good teacher. I'm a talented teacher, though. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Listen, this is unfortunately something that many people learn when they're younger. I certainly learned this. I don't know if everybody learns this. Maybe I just had bad experiences, but yeah, you get burned on promises. There's some people that like to make promises and then don't deliver. It could have been a thing where it might be contingent on you working out or you impressing them in some way. They didn't tell you that part. They tell you what they'd like to do is to invite. Now, in order to play devil's advocate here, I got to say, okay, maybe at the time your boss made that promise in good faith. They had every intention to do it. They believed that they would be able to do it, right? But maybe circumstances outside of their control have changed and they are unable to do it. It's not that they don't want to, it's that they can't. Okay, maybe their boss has put limits on them, they've slashed their budget or, whatever. So it might not be, oh, the boss is a jerk and, not keeping their promises or making promises as a way to motivate people, which is stupid because that's going to come back and bite you when the promises don't happen. So, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. It could be that. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. But if this is a big deal to you, I did a short a couple of weeks ago, and basically it was like 10 seconds long. I basically said the solution to conflict is communication. That's a general business principle, right? So if you're upset with your boss, you're miserable and you're feeling a lot of anger towards your boss because you perceived that they betrayed you by promising this and then not delivering, maybe go talk to them on it. You don't have to confront them and have it be all, anger and, I'm going to put the screws to you and, ask you about, you could just ask and say, I believe about 6 months ago, we were talking about me becoming a teacher. And I just wanted to follow up on that. Is that still in the cards? What's going on? Would you have any information about that? Just see what they say in like a positive way. Let's just talk about it. Maybe something has changed that's out of their control, and give them a chance to explain. Or they might say, I did promise you that you would be a teacher. Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm just waiting for this to come back, and it might be another month, and then hopefully we can get that happening. Something like that. Like, right? If you go in there and you confront them and you're a jerk about it, and you're clearly visibly upset and angry about it, that might not help. Okay. So if it's still in the cards, try and pursue it this way. It's all positive. Just let's have a talk. Just wondering if there was any update. Right now, if this is a big deal to you and you feel betrayed, regardless of the reason, sometimes it can help to put some feelers out to other job prospects. You could apply for teaching positions in other places just to see if it goes anywhere, right? That at least gives you other options. You don't have to take this kind of treatment. You're not a slave to these people. You can follow your own bliss and go where you want, right? If this person doesn't want to promote you, maybe other people do, right? Go apply for full-time teaching positions other places. If it's serious, you can provide them with references, but not till then, right? Hopefully that makes sense. We've reached the end of the comment stream. I just want to see if there's any questions that I wrote down some questions people asked in comments and things. I can't type out my answers in the comments. It's just not practical. So I try and sometimes save them for live streams. And the big thing is like, what is your weakness, right? What is your weakness? That's a big question. You're going to get that question in some form, in almost every interview you go to. You go to a job interview, they're going to ask you this question in some way, shape, or form. And once again, the principle underlying this question is that you are making a first impression. And the moment you start telling them how bad you are at things, that's ruined. You're making a bad first impression. If they invite you down to a job interview, and this is the first time they're meeting you, and they say, so tell me, what is your weakness or what's your greatest weakness? And you say, I'm always late for everything. Or, I can't do this type of work, or I can't do math. I never learned math properly. It's been a big problem for me. Whatever your weakness is, I have a terrible temper. I get very angry, when things don't go my way, and that's gotten me into a heap of trouble, right? The moment you say this stuff, you lose because they have a reason on a plate, signed, sealed, and delivered to eliminate you from the running. And another candidate that did not fall into this trap, who didn't say anything really bad about themselves, they unfortunately have the advantage, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to entrap you with this question. So how do we answer, what is your weakness? If somebody asks you that in a job interview, okay? Now, the thing that I've advocated for before, and this is not original to me, I got this from like a real top executive recruiter many years ago when they were coaching me. And they were saying, the way to answer that question that's really good is to give a bad thing, but it's perfectly understandable because it's a side effect of something that you do that's actually really good. So for example, you could say, well, I make the occasional mistake. I'm not 100% perfect. Occasionally I make a mistake, but that's because I work really fast. There are some people that work really slow and they triple check everything, but they work slow. I was the fastest employee in my group. I put out the most work orders or the most, units that we process, whatever it was, but once in a blue moon, I occasionally make a mistake. I feel really bad about it and I, take it very seriously, So it gives you an excuse to talk about something great that you do. And no one blames you if you choose the weakness correctly. Nobody blames you for it because it's perfectly understandable given your strength, right? If you're in a management position, the default answer is to say, I hate firing people. I'm not really great at firing people. And that's understandable because the only people that love firing people and don't mind at all are psychopaths, So it's that's perfectly understandable, right? But for the worker level where you don't have to hire and fire people, just give a weakness that's a side effect of something you do that's great. And it's even better if you can then say how you address the weakness. So for example, you put all this together and you say, I occasionally make the odd mistake. That's my weakness. I'm not 100% perfect. But it's because I work very hard. I produce more output than almost every other employee in every group I've been, right? So I take pride in that. And what I have found is that if I do make a mistake and someone notices it, I always go back and ask for it, and I fix my own mistakes once it's brought to my attention. So in the end, it doesn't really have that much of an impact on my work in general. People get a lot of output and they get good output, right? So, I'm just making this example off the top of my head. I'm making it up, but you get the idea, right? So something bad, but it's understandable as a side effect of something really good that you're telling them about that you do. And as an added bonus, you can say how you address the thing that's bad, you minimize it or you manage it so that it never ends up being a problem. And that's a great way to answer that question, right? As I hit my keyboard. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's to someone who asked me, what are your weaknesses or what's your greatest weakness? Okay, getting back in the chat. I got a few minutes left here. Let's see here. Okay, the Huda thing. Okay. Ant Johnson, how do you feel about overemployment, job stacking? I'm thinking about getting another remote gig. What do you mean by overemployment? I don't like terms like this. I don't magically understand every term there is out there because these terms, they come out of nowhere. Like if there's the latest jargon. So if you could describe more specifically what you mean by overemployment, does that mean you're doing like a gig economy? You're doing multiple jobs for different clients, doing it that way? You're a contractor or you're self-employed. You're just doing piecework for different people. If you're thinking about getting another remote gig, like that's going to depend. If you work for an employer that says you cannot work for other people while you're working for us, then obviously it's going to be a problem. Okay, so the first thing, if you don't know if that's their policy, the first thing to do would be to go and find out about it, right? Now, the problem is if you ask about it, sometimes that can alert people to the fact that you are considering or working for other people, right? Which might give away the game. So go back, read your original offer of employment, right? And then look for, if at your employer they have you have access to the HR policies, company policies. Presumably you do, right? So everybody knows the company rules and how everything works. Presumably you will have access to that in some form. Either they've given you a book or you can look it up online, or If necessary, you can go and talk to an HR person and say, just out of curiosity, I was wondering, what's the policy on this? I heard maybe someone might be doing that. I don't know. I'm curious. Do we have a policy on that? So you don't have to talk to your boss and give away and signal that you might be doing that or wanting to do it. Okay. So number one, find out about that. And if there's nothing standing in your way from doing it, go ahead. Yeah. If you have the time and the energy to do it and you can balance both things, sure. My dream says, a weakness. I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself when I make a mistake because I want to do good work. I was told by the manager, this is not a weakness, it is a strength. Yeah, well, as I was reading the beginning of that, I was saying that sounds kind of very cliched, right? Like another one is to say, my weakness is I work too hard. I stress myself out and I work too hard. It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, I can see what you're doing there. You might think you're being clever. I can see what you're doing, right? That strikes me as not genuine, as a canned answer, right? The other thing is that if you get an interviewer that says, that's not a good answer, that's a bad interviewer, and it's probably not a good place to work. Just so you know, that's what that signals. When they take exception to your answer to a question they just asked. My favorite is when they take exception to an extremely general question like, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. Well, I've worked in this business for years and I like puppies and, I like to wear bright orange and, every once in a while I go and I collect stamps, and they say, well, that's not a good answer. Why didn't you tell? You need to talk to me about your ambitions. Everyone loves that kind of trick. That's a bad interviewer, just so you know. And you don't have some people, they will try and bully you like that. I haven't heard of them really doing this much anymore, but they used to do things called stress interviews where they would intentionally do that. They would really give you a hard time. They'd have usually a panel interview, like you're staring down 4 or 5 other people and they're acting like that. They're trying to see, first of all, they're trying to probe you for certain information. Secondly, they're seeing how you respond to other people in that situation, a high stress situation. Do you lose your temper and storm out of the room? In which case they know maybe, you're not a good candidate. Or do you kind of just sort of go with it and ease the tension and keep calm and, and make it work? In which case they go, oh, this person knows their stuff. They can hold their own in these kind of high stress personal encounters. They would do that intentionally. But a lot of times we sometimes get that and it's just a bad interviewer at a bad company. Because if they had really good culture, they would not be rude to people like that, especially to strangers and especially when they're representing their company, right? So just so you know, recruiters that do that to you, they're telling you considerably more than you're telling them. They're telling you might not want to work here because the way I'm acting, that's normal here. And that's okay. And so people will be doing that whenever they feel like, just so you know. Right? It's like a salesperson losing their temper. If the salesperson is losing their temper, you know that a lot of other people in that company are going to be losing their temper too, right? The last person who should be losing their temper is someone who's representing the organization externally to the public. And that's what you are. You're a candidate, right? Ann Johnson, having 2 remote jobs. Yeah, like that can certainly work. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that that's not violating some policy or rule or request that your existing, job has, right? That's the only danger there. There's no other restrictions other than that. And of course, the effects on, your time and, I don't know if you have a family, it might take you have less free time. So if you have a family, that can be an issue. But apart from that, if you want to do it, sure. How would you answer the question, why should we not hire you? Thanks, Bill, you are the best. Well, thank you very much, Peter. That's very kind of you. Well, that's another form of saying, like, what's your weakness, right? That's another rephrasing of the question. What is your weakness? What's something bad about you that you consider bad, right? So why should we not hire you? That's asking exactly the same thing. Now, I just answered that question a moment ago. It's the same answer to that question, right? Okay. As if they asked you, what is your weakness? So, not to totally repeat myself, but about 5 minutes ago, I told a story of how I would say something to the effect of, well, I occasionally make the occasional mistake. When I'm processing work orders or patient files or construction plans or whatever it is you do, when I'm performing them, I occasionally make a mistake. I am not 100% perfect, and I regard that as as a weakness. But just so you know, it's because I process these things really quickly, and it's because I maintain the most output of anyone in my group, right? And what I've learned over the years is that if I work in such a way, before I hand in this stack of, work orders, I tell the person who's, not maybe my boss or some other person in the office, before you mail these out, just give them a once over, make sure that I've included everything. And if you ever see something, let me know. And that's happened a couple of times, and they've caught the mistakes that I made, and then I can fix them. So it ends up not being a problem. Right now, obviously, if I wasn't making this up off the top of my head, it would be a lot more coherent and it would flow better. But something like that. So that's your answer to why should we not hire you? You can say, well, I make the occasional mistake, blah, 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 blah. You say that answer. Ann Johnson, I'm looking for 3 to 6 month contracts. Well, once again, I don't have a lot of information about your situation. That doesn't tell me anything, specific. But I haven't heard anything that, that would be a red flag. It depends on the details of what you're doing and what the conditions are for the people that you're doing it for, right? If they think you're working exclusively for them and they require that, obviously that's going to be a problem. If they don't and they don't mind, not a problem, right? So it depends on the details. Okay, it's been an hour. I have to sign off. So thank you guys for being here. I will be back next week with another episode of the live stream, How to Get Hired, at the same time. Just a reminder, my new course is out, Write Like a Professional. That's in preview form. So if you get that now, if you're interested in improving your writing and you get it now, you get a 25% discount. It's got 3 modules, the low-level, mid-level, and high-level module, like within the course. And the entire low-level module is up. And certainly the next one, the mid-level, will be up before the end of the month. It may take me a bit longer than I originally hoped. I was hoping to have it all posted by December the 1st, but I'm coming down with a flu as we speak. So if that kicks in, I may not be able to do it. But in the first half of December, for sure, that'll be up. And if you get it now, you get 25% off. Also, just to reiterate something I've said several times, recently, I've decided that now that I have 3 courses, if you have any 2 of my courses, you get the 3rd one for free. So if you have enrolled in these, both of those, Get Hired or the $100 MBA, and you would like to get that for free, send me an email through my YouTube channel. You can have access to my email address if you go to my About page. Contact me. If I verify you use the same email address to register for both those courses, sure, you get the 3rd one for free. So if that's of any use to you, go for it. If you're stuck, you're trying to get a job and you have no idea how to do it, or it's not going anywhere, and you just want to get a sort of all my training from beginning to end on how you do everything, that's in this course right here, the Get Hired course. There's a link in the description if you want to learn more about it. And if you want to learn business, you want to start your own side hustle or do your own startup or work in small business, and or you want to get a promotion in your job because you understand business and it helps you enhance what you're doing and also be suited for higher level management positions, check out that course right there. Best bang for the buck around. The $100 MBA course. There's also a link in the description if you want to learn more about that. And as I said before, this is the latest one. If you want to learn how to write like an absolute pro, like you can communicate with executives and sound like an executive in writing, and if you want to do networking with these people, or you want to do any of that, or you're just a student in school, you're trying to write good papers like essays and things like this, I can teach you how to basically write anything, no matter how complex, and people will be able to understand it on the first reading because your thoughts are structured and they are expressed extremely clearly and coherently and professionally. That's quite the skill. And I learned that by teaching students for many years how to do this. So I put that into that course. So if that's of any interest to you, check it out. All the links are in the description. I'll be back in a week, and I hope to see you there. Thanks and take care, and I wish you all the best.